Good afternoon, everyone. This is my first time in Saudi Arabia, and I had a little problem, and it's called Saudi hospitality. And I have spent, since I arrived on Monday, so much time at breakfasts, lunches, and dinners, and coffee, that I have actually not learned my speech the way I usually do it. And so that's the reason why I'm going to be here rather than in the middle of the stage, because I need my notes in front of me. It's been an amazing trip, and I cannot tell you how impressed I am, how much I'm impressed by the conference and the people that my team and I have met so far. So it's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting us. All right, so as for the topic of today, we wanted to talk about ESG investing. And I wanted to start with a cautionary tale. Between 2006 and 2011, venture capital firms in the United States invested over $25 billion into clean energy technology, the so-called clean tech. And innovation in the clean tech space was really considered to be, at the time, a cornerstone of ESG in general. There was, at the time, a growing awareness of climate change issues and challenges. In particular, you may have watched it because of the documentary that Al Gore pushed in 2006 called An Inconvenient Truth. And this documentary, among many other things happening in the market, convinced investors that the energy sector was ripe for disruption. And much like the semiconductor innovation wave before, there was going to be a lot of money to be made in that sector. You can see here a quote of a very famous venture capital partner who said that green technology was going to be much bigger than the internet, and that it will likely be the biggest economic opportunity of the 21st century. And then reality happened, and the result wasn't really pretty. The VC industry lost over $13 billion, over half of the investment that they had made during that period. And there were a lot of reasons for that. The first of it was maybe the timing was wrong. Venture was arguably not the right model at a time where the cost of innovation for that particular industry were extremely high. And the time to profitability for the industry was going to be extremely long. There was other reasons as well. The natural gas prices had fell down pretty rapidly because of the fracking revolution. The Chinese government was subsidizing heavily solar panels that were flooding the market. And then as well, the clean tech ecosystem was not actually as dense and as populated by talent and expertise as it is required for an industry to flourish. So that is the result. Half of the investment was lost. Now, fast forward to this decade, and things have changed quite dramatically. To start, there is an even higher awareness, and you're probably aware of that in 2015, 2016, the Paris Agreement, to a large extent, changed the world. And they made the climate crisis and the impact of burning fossil fuels something that was on the top of the agenda of pretty much every government around the world. At the same time, we saw the very role of capitalism and its relationship with society and the wider world being called in question by a larger and larger share of the population around the globe. And so what happened as a result of that is that suddenly thousands of companies, including many household names that I'm sure you're familiar with, were rushing to make extremely public commitments to net zero and to different ESG initiatives. All the above, combined with what is now a significantly more mature tech, talent, and investment ecosystem, means that we have truly entered clean tech 2.0, and this is a pretty phenomenal market. So at Techstars, we love numbers. So we decided to put a few in front of you. I don't know how many of you realize how gigantic the opportunity is when we talk about clean tech, climate change, and all the innovations that is associated with this. Innovation is usually focused on solving the biggest problems of an era. And you probably remember what happened when the internet appeared and when search engines made it possible for us to find information everywhere. And then mobile phone happening, whether it's iPhone or Android. And all of that created hundreds, thousands of startups that to this day exist and have created billions of dollars of values for their employees as well as for their shareholders. We are very likely going to see something similar with a lot of other technologies. Crypto, specifically blockchain, the metaverse, Web 3.0, artificial intelligence, genetics technology, to name just a few. And last but not least, everything related to climate tech. It is very, very clear that there is a huge opportunity when it comes to climate tech because we are still all together struggling a little bit to figure out how to transition away from fossil fuels, how to drive down global GHG emissions, and how to incentivize sustainability. And so when we talk numbers, what you can see here are a few researchers that have been done over the last few years. In 2014, the World Bank estimated that the climate tech opportunity could be worth $6.4 trillion over the decade to 2023. Today, climate tech is also a very fast emerging asset class for private investors. The second number that you see on the screen, $87.5 billion, is what private investors have invested between July 2020 and July 2021, 12 months, $87.5 billion. And the average deal size has more than quadrupled during that period. If you look at the public market, ESG-aligned funds have soared as well. The UN-supported Principles for Responsible Investment say its signatories have now 121 trillion, yes, it's a trillion again, $121 trillion of assets under management. And in 2020, the ESG funds that existed captured $51 billion of net new money from investors. So lots of money flowing into a market that keeps growing, and yet there is a question that is on a lot of people's mind, which is ESG actually a good investment? And does it actually make a difference? And here's the spoiler of everything that I'm going to tell you afterwards, is that it's really, really not clear that the way we're doing it right now, that the way we're doing ESG investment right now around the globe is the right way to do it. There are two main arguments that advocates for ESG investing are using to promote them. The first one is that it generates superior yields, and this is much better than conventional stocks and funds. And then the second one is that it can play a key role in stopping climate change impact, as well as driving better corporate behavior. And so what I'd like to do is to discuss a little bit whether or not these arguments are true. So the first one is ESG investing the way we're doing it is driving superior performance. There are some research firms and analysis out there that do suggest indeed that ESG funds do outperform the market, and that's a narrative that has been largely amplified by mass media. In 2020, for example, there was a research published by Morningstar, which is a data and research team, and they analyzed the performance of 4,900 funds to figure out whether sustainable funds can actually beat their traditional counterparts over the long term. And their answer to that question was that, in general, the majority of them actually do outperform, about 58% of them. The problem is that there is an equally large number of research that showed the opposite conclusion. there has been a lot of skeptics around that premise. Scientific Beta, which is an index provider, which is linked to an actual French think tank, has found that in the US and other developed markets, 75% of outperformance was due to factors which were completely unrelated to ESG. And then another study that was looking at over 1,100 papers, peer-reviewed ESG papers, that were published between 2015 and 2020 found that you cannot actually distinguish the financial performance of ESG investing from conventional investing. And then on top of that, the issue is that it's not just about overblown hype and people telling each other and media telling us that ESG investing is good. What is equally important is that investment that appear under the ESG banner often have little or nothing to do with ESG at all. In many cases, it's basically shameless greenwashing by the company concerns to make them feel good and to make us feel good when we invest in these funds. Last year, The Economist crunched the numbers on the world top 20 biggest ESG funds. And it reported that on average, each one of these funds had investment in 17 fossil fuels producers. They also had investment in gambling, alcohol, and tobacco. So not exactly ESG type of companies. In other words, one of the reasons ESG funds perform broadly in line with the market is that they are the market, quite literally. In the public markets, a lot of the ESG ETF are basically the same companies that have been packaged up in different ways in new indexes. You're not investing in something that is more environmentally friendly than before. It's called differently. So the second argument is about the cost of capital. The people who defend the way we're currently investing in ESG explain that ESG raises the cost of capital for the so-called bad companies, the companies that ruin our environment, have bad corporate practices, treat their employees badly, et cetera, et cetera. And the question is, really, if you look at research, that is also not very clear. MSCI, which is a company that, among many other things, publishes and creates public indexes, did publish indeed a study that shows that companies with high ESG scores on average experience lower cost of capital compared to companies with poor ESG scores in both developed and emerging markets. The problem is these kind of academic papers are really only looking at a small subset of companies. And while their conclusions are absolutely valid, their implementation, the implementation of this conclusion in the real world is a completely different challenge and a very different reality. When it comes to driving deep and permanent behavior change around climate change and ESG topic, it doesn't seem like such investment in public company are actually shifting behaviors or anything like that. They're not shifting it fast and they're not shifting it forcefully enough. Just a couple of data again. When there was a dip in 2020, as most of the world locked down in global oil supply and consumption. The thing is, it rose back in 2021, and it's predicted to rise even further this year and next year to completely new level never seen before. The same thing is true for the coal industry. And what we see is that economic recovery is expected to send coal demand to a potential all-time high as soon as 2022, so this year. And so investor and the SEC can potentially force the hands of the energy giants, but most global oil and natural gas is actually still produced by government-controlled entities who are pretty much immune to shareholder pressure. So just to be clear, I'm not against ESG investing altogether, and I really think that there is more that needs to be done. What I'm saying is that in its current form, the way ESG investing is being done often falls short of the claim its advocates make for it, and needs to be done very differently if we want to have a real impact while also generating significant financial upside. So we talked about the problem, now let's try to talk about the solutions. Let's talk first about public investment, because there's still, this is still where a lot of the money goes, and there's still a lot of companies trying to do something in the ESG space, even if it doesn't work as well as they claim it to be. So if you want to invest in public companies, there are a few fixes that need to happen that are currently happening. The first one is around definition. We need to review the way ESG is being defined, the way it is being categorized. The definition of ESG is both way too broad. I've just mentioned a few minutes ago that a lot of ESG funds often contain stocks that have little or nothing to do with ESG. But it is also defined in a very paradoxical way, in a way too narrow way, because to have a meaningful impact on the environment and on society, both specifically ESG-focused solutions, as well as companies that integrate ESG into the way they are set up and operate, must be supported. We need to review that definition of what an ESG company is. Once we've done that, we actually need to talk about ratings. Because right now, the way ratings are being made is much more of an art than a science, and there's not a lot of rigor. It is hardly helped by the lack of consensus between the biggest ESG rating agencies. They're not very transparent. They don't really explain their methodology very well. The large corporations, which have equally large CSR teams, as well as even larger PR teams, surprisingly enough, tend to score much better than small firms in these ratings. And so, in general, when we talk about ratings, we need significantly more rigor and significantly greater transparencies so that we understand better what the metrics are used, so that when we invest in public companies ESG focused, we actually can verify, be sure that they are indeed ESG focused. The good news is that there's quite a bit of movement in that area, in particular around setting up clear metrics. Last year, there were 60+ business leaders, including the business leaders of companies like BP or Shell, who committed to the core stakeholder capitalism metrics released by the World Economic Forum International Business Council. So there is progress, but a lot more needs to be done. Last but not least is disclosure. When we talk about investing in publicly listed company with a focus on ESG, investors and fund managers should be pushing for far greater disclosure from listed companies. The current system is largely based on voluntary reporting, and it's an open invitation to greenwashing. Companies, to a large extent, promote window dressing and don't really do a lot of the work that is required in the background. They don't really report things around accurate emissions data from across their supply chain, for example. So this question around more transparency and mandatory reporting would enable fund manager or investor to have a much clearer picture of their portfolio carbon footprint if that was disclosed. So these are only 3 solutions. Objectively, these solutions are not the solution. Even if we were to implement this solution, there's so much more to be done. And then as we're implementing them, the biggest challenge is that there is a lot of pushback from some very powerful stakeholders and very little change. It's going to take an incredible amount of time to make legacy companies move. If you look at history, in the vast majority of cases, legacy companies change course only when they had to, not because they wanted to. Because frankly, they have very little incentive to disrupt themselves. Sometimes they change thanks to government entities and to regulators, but more often than not, they change because disruptors were starting to eat their lunch. And so in the meantime, and we're going to talk about the private investment, you can absolutely invest in public ESG funds And you will most likely, if you choose well, get an average market returns because they do reflect pretty much the market, but you will unlikely have any kind of impact on anything related to ESG topics. So what do we do next? What do we do next if we really, really want, as investors, to move the dial when it comes to climate change and the environment, when we really want to have an impact, and at the same time, we also want to make money and deliver a meaningful return to our LPs? That's the answer. The answer is the private market and investing as early as possible. There's absolutely no question, there's no doubt that the innovator's dilemma is real and that large businesses very simply feel the burden of just maintaining their status quo. Again, very little incentive for them to change things. This is the reason why the most dramatic and world-changing ideas, as well as some of the largest financial upsides, they grow out of the earliest stage of startups. So the good news is there's already globally 3,000 climate tech startups that exist. And among them, there is 78 unicorns. 78 unicorns is both a lot and not enough. There is, without any doubt, many, many more unicorns that will come out of these 3,000 climate tech startups. And there will be many, many more solutions to the global change, climate change problem that we're currently facing. And there will likely be many, many, many more billions of dollars of financial upsides for investors who invest in these companies. So at Techstars, we do love entrepreneurs. And that's the reason why I'm talking about that. We really love entrepreneurs because we think that entrepreneurs are magicians. We believe that they make the impossible possible. We believe that they tackle the biggest problem that we, humanity, face. And what I wanted really to do today wasn't really to walk you through all these problems and all these numbers. What I really wanted you to experience today is that magic. I wanted you to hear from founders who are tackling this kind of problems very directly. And so I'm going to show you a few videos of founders who are doing exactly that.
Hi, I'm Erica Boeing, founder and CEO of Accelerate Wind. Accelerate Wind is developing affordable wind turbines for commercial buildings that take advantage of the fact that wind speeds are naturally faster right at the edges of the roofs. Our turbines install at these edges of roofs and are designed to be installed by solar installers alongside solar so that commercial buildings can move closer to net zero energy generation. I developed this technology while on a Fulbright scholarship in the Netherlands when I was trying to figure out how to use my engineering talents to impact sustainability. I'm really excited to bring local energy generation solutions to people, enabling them to take control over their own sustainability.
Hi there, my name is Grant. I'm CEO of DroneSeed and president of Silvaseed. And what we do is we are a one-stop shop for reforestation, specifically temperate conifers after wildfire. And we generate high-quality carbon removal offsets. What I mean by one-stop shop is that we collect seed from the wild. There's not enough of it. We grow millions of seedlings in our nurseries. There's not enough grow space. We utilize heavy lift drone swarms to deploy seed vessels out to site and give labor better tools to do more faster. And then we pay for it all with forward-looking offsets under Climate Action Reserve's Climate Forward Protocol, which is brand new in the last 24 months, and it makes offsets that are focused on reforestation possible. And that's really exciting. We've got our first project coming online this spring, and really the mission of the company is to make reforestation scalable and mitigate the worst effects of climate change.
My name is Nick Myers, and I am the co-founder and CEO of Phoenix Tailings. Phoenix Tailings was founded to be the world's first fully clean mining and metals production company, creating new metals like rare earth metals with no hazardous wastes, no carbon emissions, and entirely sustainable from an environmental standpoint, a societal standpoint, and an economic standpoint. We do this because the industry to produce metals is incredibly hazardous. There's 174 billion metric tons of waste produced every single year. That's enough to cover the entire state of California, plus 9% of the world's carbon emissions, and every war in history has ever been fought over access to those natural resources. So we wanted to build a better way to be able to access those resources effectively to produce the technologies that we need for tomorrow.
Hello everyone, my name is Josh Aviv. I'm the founder and CEO of SparkCharge. At SparkCharge, we've created the world's first mobile, intelligent, on-demand EV charging network, where an electric vehicle owner can have range delivered anytime and anywhere they want. In order to do this, we created two core pieces of technology. The Roadie, which is a modular, ultra-fast, and portable DC charger that can be delivered to electric vehicle owners anywhere and anytime. Number two was our revolutionary mobile app called Currently, where an electric vehicle owner can select the time, date, location, and how much range they want, and with the push of a button, have it delivered to them. We are now on track to deliver over 100,000 miles of range to EV owners, and we've already cut out about 5 tons of carbon. We're super excited to have this service launched in San Francisco, LA, and Dallas, Texas.
So these are the magicians of tomorrow. These are the ones who are going to change the world and who are going to help us solve the problems that we're currently facing with climate change. And I know that there's many, many more out there. ESG investing is the biggest economic opportunity of the 21st century. We just need to do it in a very, very different way. And so if you want to change the world, if you want to support an ESG-focused agenda, if you want to help the problems that we're facing with climate change, and if you want to make a lot of money, what you need to do is to invest in early-stage startups which are focused on this kind of problem. And you need to invest in a lot of them wherever you are in the world, starting here with Saudi Arabia entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.